I have a tip or hack, if you will, that may help you receive a larger stimulus check once the next round of checks get passed. So with the latest news coming out, the odds are higher than ever of seeing another stimulus bill passed, and within that bill, we will very likely see stimulus checks, unemployment boost, vaccine funding, state and local government funding, increased SNAP benefits, tons of different programs with funding for various issues, but the stimulus checks are the area of interest for most people, and we'll very likely see a stimulus check of $1,400. Now, Democrats who control the Senate, the House, and the White House are kind of taking a two-track method right now on the next stimulus bill. They are setting aside a budget reconciliation bill with all their top priorities in it. It'll very likely turn out to be very similar to Biden's $1.9 trillion stimulus proposal that includes all those issues that I just mentioned and much, much more. It's a huge comprehensive bill. And they also will have in their back pocket the ability to kind of negotiate with the Republican side and possibly come up with some kind of bipartisan bill. So as of right now, they would like to have a bipartisan bill, it seems, but they have this option B where if they can't get a bipartisan bill passed, they're going to go ahead with budget reconciliation. And what that means for the average American is the odds are greater than ever that a stimulus bill will be passed because we have this option A. If that fails, we got option B in the back pocket here. Now, the timeline for the passage of the next stimulus bill is very likely mid-March. And that's because unemployment boosts expire, I think, the 14th of March. And because of that deadline and because how long it will take to set up the budget reconciliation bill, we'll very likely see something passed mid-March. And then the first stimulus checks will come out in late March to potentially early April. Now just stay with me here for 1 minute and you'll see the hack that might be able to enable you to receive an even larger stimulus payment the third time around. So a change that we're going to very likely see on the next round of stimulus checks is them more narrowed down to lower income earners. Biden said that he's willing to do this. He's willing to narrow down the checks to lower income earners, but he's not willing to lower the size of the checks. Now with the Republican proposal, we saw $1,000 checks. Biden says he's not willing to do that. He made a promise to the American populace that he would give them $2,000 stimulus checks, which is the difference between the $600 that was passed in December and $2,000, which is the $1,400 checks. The Senate also voted on a non-binding amendment to do this and passed it with a very large majority to target down the checks a little bit more. So we know the general sentiment is there. And then many Republicans and moderate Democrats want more narrowly targeted checks. So the odds of this happening are quite high, but we'll still see most people receiving these checks. We don't know the exact income limits yet, but it'll likely be something like $50,000 a year for single filers and $100,000 a year for joint filers, and something like $85,000 to $90,000 a year for head of households. And with all of those, the check will then scale down after those limits. So, we might see something like an income limit of $50,000 for individuals, and it scales down to $70,000, where the $1,400 check would scale directly with that income and then zero out at something like $70,000. We don't know the exact numbers yet or how exactly that will be debated, but we'll likely see this targeted. And this is important to the hack that I'm going to explain in a second here. So here is a tip that will enable you to get the largest check possible. So stimulus checks are sent out by the IRS and are based on your most recent tax return. The very first stimulus check that was sent out last March in the CARES Act was based on either your 2018 or your 2019 tax return, whichever one you had most recently filed. And that was kind of split. A lot of people went with the 2018 and a lot of people went with the 2019 taxes, whichever you had done at the time. And the non-filers had the non-filer portal, which we will likely see that again. So if you don't file taxes, you'll still be okay, no matter what happens with the new stimulus bill. But basing the first stimulus check on 2018 or 2019 tax returns caused a problem for millions of people who saw a sharp decline in income in 2020. Maybe you lost hours, maybe you lost your job altogether. Most people saw a decline in income, but the stimulus check didn't reflect that. So there were some people who may have been a high earner in 2019, lost their job, but then didn't receive a stimulus check. And obviously that is a major issue. Now, because of this, because many people have seen a decline in income in 2020 compared to 2019, I would strongly recommend filing your taxes as early as possible for 2020. This is because the next check passed into law, which we'll likely see sometime in March, will use the most recent tax return filed to calculate the stimulus check size. So if you're above that income limit, it's going to be calculated based on your most recent tax return. So if this bill gets passed in mid-March, which it's seeming it will, and the normal electronic tax return takes 21 days to process, you'll want to file as soon as you can if you saw a decline in income. This year's tax filing was delayed because some new systems were needed for the IRS, both because they're expecting more people than ever to file for their taxes, and there were some new systems that need to be built to account for the stimulus payments and those who haven't received them yet and wanted to receive them as credits on their tax returns. But you can begin filing for your 2020 tax return on February 12th. So you'll want to prepare so you can file as soon as you can if this applies for you. This is going to be especially important for anyone who earns around that $50,000 a year mark for single filers or $100,000 a year mark for couples. That'll be the group that's most important because we'll likely see that targeted check somewhere around there. Now, if you saw a decline in income in 2020, filing early could literally mean the difference between receiving a few extra $100 or not, depending on how much your income changed from 2019 to 2020. So I just hope this helps you get a few extra bucks in your pocket. And when I realized this, I was like, okay, I need to make a video on this because this really could enable people to get a few extra $100 or potentially a whole stimulus check, depending on your situation. So make sure you subscribe to my channel if you want up-to-date tips on how to earn just a little bit more, and share this video if you think it was valuable and someone else might benefit from it. And I would like to thank you for watching, and I hope you have a profitable day.